and I'd start. One of the things, don't forget, one of the things that went away that people really liked was child tax credit. And granted, it was Manchin who killed it, but I would probably be running the hell out of child tax credit right now, just saying, look, you remember when we did this, and I think remember how many kids were lifted from poverty, but since this has happened, since we went away, and you can tie it back to being out of the majority, right? Um, I would bang the hell out of that. I'd bang the hell out of child tax credit. But here's the other thing, and I think it's really evident from the way that the polls missed. Here's a question, and I think it goes back to when the conversation we were having with Brendan. And is it kind of similar to 2020, where everyone's like, no, the polls weren't really that off. They were, they're still in variance. Is the problem the polling or the problem the reporting on the polling? And I say that, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is, when you talk about what the landscape is for 24, um, do we trust the narrative of what the landscape is anymore? Because that I'm assuming that narrative is shaped or initially backed up by polling. So when we hear, and I know I don't disagree with you that there's a lot of talk about the landscape in 24 not being friendly to Democrats, but are we just going to take people's word for it, or what's your take on that?
I don't think we're going to take anybody's word for it. A couple of things, right? First of all, the 2024 race gets the boost of being the presidential, right? So there's going to be senators who get boosted because people are shown out to vote for president, right? Also, if Trump's on the ballot, right? If Trump's on the ballot in 24 and it's Trump versus whoever, Trump versus Biden, Trump versus whoever, that helps Democrats as well. I think that's just a thing that we have to consider now. Trump's getting killed in every election. There's no reason not to believe that he will again, right? As far as the polling, I talked about in Brendan, obviously, briefly, but from what I understand, what people are saying, despite Nate Silver and Nate Cohen going crazy on Twitter, is the polling was pretty accurate, but the reporting was off. The problem is, I think we have to decide what accurate means, right? And I talked about this a little bit. Nate Silver says it's Republicans up by 2.5 with a margin of error of 3. So that means it could swing and be Democrats' favorite of a half a point. And that's what ended up happening. So he looks at it and says, look, we thought Republicans were up 2.5. There was a margin error of 3 and it ended up being the margin of error, right? So they think that's accurate. So we have to start maybe instead of saying Republicans are up 2.5, we might have to say it's a range from Democrats up point or Republicans up 3.5. So does that make sense? Like there's just going to be a little bit of a grading here, right? Now polls, technically, I guess they say they were accurate, but the reporting was way off. So people took Republicans up 2.5 as a monsoon coming, as opposed to this is going to be a tight election, which it ended up being. There's a plausible case, John, as far as 2024. There's a plausible case that we win the White House, keep it. We win back the House, but lose the Senate, which would be just a completely different dynamic, obviously, right? Because look, and we don't have to get into it now. We have a long way to go, but the incumbency advantage of a president, it's like there's only been 3 presidents who ever lost it, and one of them was the last one, right? So it's hard to beat an incumbent. Obama was way, way disliked by Republicans, and his second term, Bush had a disaster of a war, and now he got the bump at the midterms. By 2004, John, it was a disaster. The Iraq War, the Afghanistan was all a disaster by 2004, and he still beat Kerry, right? So there's a plausible chance we might lose the Senate, but win back the House and keep the White House. So there's a lot of different possibilities here.